What is up, ladies and gentlemen? And it's Wednesday! You know what that means? It's time for a one-off! Few things. A, haircut, yeah, I look great, 10 out of 10. B, you might be like, John, you look a little grunge. Been kind of sick, so today has been very low effort for me. It's a day off of work, and I have done pretty much, this is the most productive thing I've done all day, unless you count sleeping off sickness productive, which I do. So, pretty productive, but not in your typical way, and yeah, I look a little, it's fine. That being said, I had this idea, and it was fun, but I was thinking, oh, this is going to be a sick one, this is going to be short. I love this one. I'm very excited for you guys to listen to it. I thought it was fun and just a good, entertaining short. So let's get into the one-off.
Magical Lawyer by Jonathan Howe. Read to you by Jonathan Howe. Nar staggered into the bar, clutching his bloody arm. Nar, what's wrong? Prin called out. She ran across the bar to him using the cloth she'd been holding to staunch the blood. Centaurs, he panted. Nar tried to shoo her away, but he was too weak. They're still chasing me. Prin's face paled at the mention of centaurs. What did you do to anger them? Nar snorted. I existed. Wasn't even in their territory. And they're still coming? She asked, voice weak. Nar nodded. As if on command, a thunder of hooves could be heard charging down the street. Everyone, out the back, Prin called out to the bar patrons. The group, mostly regulars, left immediately. No one messed with centaurs. Nar watched them go. He wanted to leave with them, but it would only put everyone in more danger. The centaurs were liable to torch the bar. He staggered to a seat, breathing heavily. Prin brought him a drink, one of his favorites, off the top shelf. If I have to die, he thought, this is the drink I want in hand. It was at that moment when he and Prin noticed the single patron left in the establishment, because she came and sat directly across from him. The human was tall, even for their species. She had long dark hair and tanned skin, East Asian in complexion. She wore a straight-lined business suit matching her facial expression. Ma'am, you should leave, Prin stammered. The woman took a sip from the drink she'd brought over. Did you really do nothing wrong? The woman asked. Nar shook his head. You know, centaurs, the most vindictive race to exist. She nodded thoughtfully. Especially against goblins, she noted. Well, if you really did nothing wrong, then we should be fine. That being said, there will still be probably a sizable cleanup afterwards. I apologize. Nar and Prin looked at each other in confusion. Moments later, the door was flung off its hinges, crashing into the bar. A tall figure stooped through the door, silhouette outlined by the streetlights outside. Where'd you run off to, little gobber? The condescending voice of the centaur mocked as he stepped into the building. He wore a minotaur leather jacket over his human torso, but nothing else. The centaur was followed in by 5 more, all brandishing their longswords, despite having little room to do so in the now cramped space. Found them running home to the wifey, the first one called out again. The other centaurs jeered, but Nar could only pay attention to the human as she rolled her eyes and turned in her chair to face the bullies. Can we help you? She asked. The centaurs paused, looking inquisitively down at the newcomer. What are you, some kind of delegate from the humans? Objection, the woman said matter of fact. Unnecessary to the current litigations. Nar and Prin made faces. Sure, they'd heard of lawyers, but it was more of a human thing than of magical creatures. The centaurs seemed similarly confused. Look, lady, one of the centaur goonies said, if the boss asks you a question, you answer. Not if the question is irrelevant, she replied coolly. Are you taking the place of the prosecution, then? I can defend myself, the main centaur said, brandishing his long sword, which is more than I can say for your goblin friend over there. That actually segues nicely into my second point, the human said. Are you the party responsible for the wound inflicted on my client? Her client? Nar wondered. Everything happening was going way over his head. Yeah, as a matter of fact, I did, the first centaur spat. The little gobber should have known to get off the street for us. I was in the death thicket, Nar objected. I would have died. Objection, the human called. Conjecture. She glared at Nar. He backed down. She faced the centaur again. You are aware that my client is a member of the magical community. This grants him protection under the Accords. He is also on his native soil, granting him further protections under Waishian law. The centaur brayed and tossed his hair. I don't need to pay attention to the laws. They're constructs used to govern lesser beings. The human sighed and muttered something under her breath. Nar thought he caught a bit about hating centaurs. Same, he thought. If that is the case, she continued, then you are in violation of the law. This hunt for the goblin puts you in a precarious situation. Unless you can provide substantial evidence to show his guilt, your actions will be considered criminal. The centaur brayed again. He looked side to side for support from his companions. All any of them did was shrug and back up a step. No, he said, shaking his head and stamping a frontal horse leg. You know what? The only evidence I need is my own. The goblin is going to die for not knowing his place. I rest my case, Your Honor, the human said. She turned back and took a long pull from her drink. The centaur contorted his face into a mask of rage. He hefted his sword and moved towards their table. I really wouldn't, the human said calmly, moving her cup under the table for some reason. Nar, immediately regretting his choice to trust the human, tried pushing out of his chair. He didn't get far before the centaur's sword caught him at the neck. He cried out in terror as the sword passed cleanly through. Nothing happened to Nar. He stumbled to a stop, clutching his neck and finding no blood. What? The centaur cried. Nar turned to see him raising the sword once more. Before he could bring the weapon down, a phantom force ran through the centaur's neck, decapitating him. Nar's eyes went wide in horror as the head tumbled forward. The body slumped, blood spurting out from the stump. The sword clattered down, gouging the floor. Prin screamed and turned away. Hey! One of the centaurs screamed. He pulled a short bow off his back and knocked an arrow in one fluid motion. He drew back and released, sending the bolt straight through Nar. Once again, he didn't feel anything. Moments later, a wound appeared on the centaur's chest, as if a bolt sailed through him. He fell forward, also dead. The other 4 centaurs looked panicked. If you haven't picked up on it yet, the human said over the chaos, these goblins are under magical protection. Take the bodies of your compatriots and leave. They shuffled awkwardly for a moment, clearly unsure. Finally, one of them grumbled and stamped a hoof. He moved to the center to retrieve the leader. The other 3 followed suit. Also know these goblins will remain under protection until perpetuity. Any attempts at retaliation will be met with the same result unless just cause can be proven. They didn't say anything but glared daggers at her as they left. The bar was quiet once they were gone. The human pulled her drink out from under the table and took another pull, finishing the beverage. She set the empty glass on the blood-stained table. What was that? Nar asked in wonder. She calmly reached into the collar of her blouse and pulled out an opal locket. It glowed brightly, giving off a magical aura. My name is Yui. I am a lawyer of the MRD. Nar and Prin looked at each other, not entirely sure what to make of the strange woman. Well, Yui, Prin said, I guess we need to thank you. A crash resounded as a Molotov cocktail was thrown in. Prin screamed as fire spread across the floor. Yui waved her down. These centaurs really don't get it, she explained calmly. I suggest you sit and enjoy. You're about to get all the beauty of fire without the heat or damage. Nar glanced at the fire nervously, but what the woman said was true. As the flames spread, nothing they touched seemed to burn. What's more, when they reached Yui's chair, they licked up along her body. The woman didn't flinch. Nar even caught a hint of a smile flickering across her lips. He stood to move to the flames, tentatively reaching out and touching them. He barely felt a thing as they touched him. Just the bare presence of fire without the heat or death. I still don't get it, he said in awe. Just know that I've been stationed in this district to make sure the law is upheld. While I'm here, the centaurs will not be able to harm you and yours in retaliation for their actions today. Will you become a regular? Prin asked. Yui smiled, her first broad smile of the night. She looked around the bar, which was now engulfed in the harmless flames. Probably, assuming this place doesn't burn down. She laughed at her own joke. Could you get me another drink? A Seder whiskey. Put it on my tab.
And we're back. Okay, so yeah, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. This is kind of my answer to magical creature things. I love the series Fablehaven because it takes this idea of a world where magical creatures and magic exists but it does magical creatures the best. Like, I love Brandon Sanderson. His worlds are unique, but he doesn't just, like, have a world where unicorns and centaurs and satyrs and dragons and all these things exist. His worlds are more human-based. That's fine. I love it. Fablehaven, it's all about the magical creatures. They do really good, like, representation, dynamics, things like that. So I wanted to write something along those lines that was fun and went over that. And then other thing, just like deer and how I kind of have hatred for deer, I think centaurs get this kind of like, oh, they're majestic, they're cool. I don't know. I feel like a lot of the centaurs I've heard of are kind of just rude and vindictive, and they would totally be the type of creatures who are like, oh, we're better than you. Like, centaurs are dumb. Stop liking centaurs. They're stupid. They're just horse people. Horses aren't cool. Why do people like horses so much? Anyway, I hope you enjoyed just Magical Lawyer OOW. It was a great time, and we'll see you guys next week. Anyway, Nick, bye.